Most people panic when they lift their plant and see a gap between the soil and the pot edge. They assume the plant is dying. They assume they forgot to water too many times. They start watering more frequently. They repot immediately. They add more soil to fill the gap. But here is the truth. Soil pulling away from the pot is not always a sign you did something wrong. In fact, in most cases, that gap is not telling you the plant is dying. It is telling you something specific has happened to the soil structure itself. Your plant might be perfectly fine, but the medium it is growing in has changed. And later in this video, I will get to one cause of soil shrinkage that almost every plant owner treats as an emergency when it is actually a completely reversible part of the seasonal cycle. Have you ever watered your plant and watched the water immediately run down the gap between soil and pot, draining straight out the bottom without soaking in? Most people think this means the soil is desperately thirsty and needs even more water. They keep pouring water into the pot over and over, expecting it to eventually absorb, but it just keeps running down the edges and disappearing out the drainage holes. The soil stays dry and dusty, no matter how much water you add. This is not a watering problem. This is a chemistry problem. When peat-based potting soil dries out completely, the organic particles develop a waxy hydrophobic coating that fundamentally changes how the soil behaves. Peat moss contains natural oils and resins that migrate to the surface of each particle when all moisture is completely gone. Once this waxy coating forms, the soil actively repels water instead of absorbing it, just like water beading up on a freshly waxed car. The soil mass physically shrinks as it dries, pulling away from the pot walls, and when you finally water, the liquid takes the path of least resistance, straight down the visible gap. The roots packed in the center of the pot never get wet because the water literally never touches them. And here is what almost nobody talks about. This is not permanent structural damage to the soil. Hydrophobic peat can be rehydrated successfully, but it requires a completely different watering technique than what most people instinctively try. Pouring water from the top will never work once the soil has gone fully hydrophobic. You are essentially trying to wet a candle. The waxy surface sheds every single drop you give it. If you respond to this by just watering more frequently from the top, desperately hoping it will eventually soak in, you will never solve the underlying problem. The soil will stay bone dry, the roots will stay desperately thirsty, and the plant will continue to decline, even though you genuinely think you are watering it properly. So what should you do instead? Use bottom watering to rehydrate hydrophobic soil from the inside out, bypassing the water-repellent surface entirely. Set the entire pot in a basin of room temperature water deep enough to come halfway up the pot sides and leave it there for 30 full minutes. The water will slowly wick upward through the drainage holes by capillary action, forcing moisture back into the soil mass from below, where the hydrophobic coating is weakest. Once the soil is fully rehydrated from this internal soaking, it will physically swell back against the pot walls and start absorbing water normally again from above. Your soil was not permanently destroyed, it was just chemically locked, and you unlocked it by changing the angle of water entry. Have you ever noticed soil pulling away right after you watered, creating a gap that was not there before? Most people assume they did not water enough. They try adding more soil to fill the gap. But if this happens immediately after watering, you are seeing root ball contraction from chronic underwatering over weeks. When consistently underwatered, roots and soil mass physically shrink. Root cells lose turgor pressure, fine root hairs die back, the entire root ball becomes smaller and denser. Soil particles compact as organic matter breaks down without moisture replacement. When you finally water after prolonged dry periods, soil does not immediately re-expand to fill the pot. And here is what almost nobody talks about. This shrinkage happens gradually over weeks. By the time you see the gap, damage is done. Roots have adapted to survival mode. If you respond by simply watering more frequently without addressing root health, the gap will not close. The shrunken root ball stays small because damaged roots cannot regenerate quickly. So what should you do instead? Repot in fresh soil to rebuild the root zone. Gently remove the plant. Loosen compacted root ball, trim dead roots, repot in quality mix and water thoroughly. This gives roots room to expand and access to nutrients for regeneration. Your plant was not beyond saving. It needed a fresh start. Have you ever seen soil pulling away even though you water regularly and the plant seems healthy? Most people think the pot is defective or they bought bad soil. But if you water consistently and the plant grows, that gap is not about water. It is about soil composition breaking down over time. Potting soil is not permanent. It is organic materials that decompose slowly over months. As they break down, they lose volume, particles get smaller, air pockets collapse, total mass shrinks. After 6 to 12 months, well-maintained soil can lose 20 to 30% of original volume. The soil pulls away because there is literally less soil than when you first potted. And here is what almost nobody talks about. This is completely normal and inevitable. Potting soil has a lifespan of 1 to 2 years. The gap is not failure, it is soil reaching end of useful life. If you respond by just adding more soil on top, you are putting a band-aid on structural problems. So what should you do instead? Repot in completely fresh mix every 12 to 18 months. Remove old soil, check roots, give the plant new foundation. This resets structure and gives roots access to fresh nutrients and aeration. Your soil was not defective, it was old. Have you ever noticed the gap appearing in terracotta pots but not plastic, even with same watering? Most people think terracotta pots are defective. But if this only happens in terracotta, you are dealing with material physics. Terracotta is porous clay that actively wicks moisture out through pot walls and evaporates it. This constant wicking dries soil near pot walls faster than the center. Edges dry first, shrink first, pull away while center stays moist, creating the gap. This is not underwatering. It is the pot material extracting water continuously for better aeration. And here is what almost nobody talks about. This is a trade-off, not a flaw. Terracotta prevents root rot, but requires more frequent watering. If you treat terracotta like plastic, you will always see shrinkage because you are not accounting for extra water the clay steals. So what should you do instead? Accept that terracotta requires more frequent watering and adjust your schedule. Check every 3 to 4 days instead of weekly. Water when top inch is dry. This keeps soil moist enough that it does not shrink. Your pot was not the problem. Watering frequency needed calibration. Now here is the one most people get backwards. Have you seen the gap appear suddenly in late fall or winter, even though the plant was fine all summer? Most people panic, thinking they suddenly started doing something wrong. But if the plant is not wilting and new growth simply slowed, that gap is not crisis, it is dormancy. Many houseplants go through semi-dormant periods in winter. During dormancy, the plant dramatically reduces water uptake because it is not actively growing. Roots stop expanding, transpiration slows. The plant uses a fraction of the water it consumed in summer. The soil surface dries from evaporation, even though the plant is not pulling water from below. This uneven drying causes topsoil layers to shrink and pull away, while deeper soil stays moist. The gap appears because the plant stopped drinking, not because it needs more water. And here is what almost nobody talks about. This seasonal gap is temporary and self-correcting. When spring arrives and the plant resumes growth, it drinks again, soil rehydrates evenly, gap closes on its own. Treating this like emergency and repotting midwinter can shock a dormant plant and disrupt its natural cycle. So what should you do instead? Reduce watering frequency in winter and let the plant rest. Water only when soil is dry 2 to 3 inches down. Accept the gap is seasonal and will resolve when growing season returns. Your plant was not dying, it was hibernating. There is a quiet confidence that comes from understanding that not every visual change requires immediate intervention. When you stop treating every gap, every color shift, every slow week as a disaster, you start seeing your plants as organisms with natural cycles and responses. You realize that soil is dynamic, not static. It swells and shrinks, it ages and compacts. It responds to moisture and temperature just like the plant itself. I walk past my plants now, and I see a gap between soil and pot as information, not alarm. I see terracotta pots with slight shrinkage, and I know that is the price of breathability. I see a winter gap, and I know the plant is resting, not failing. I remember when I used to repot frantically every time I saw a gap, convinced I was losing the plant. I was not losing anything. I was just reading the wrong signals. If this changed the way you see soil gaps, subscribe and share this with someone who keeps repotting their plants every month, trying to fix something that is not broken. We are building a community that understands soil is alive and changing. It is a living medium, and living things shrink, expand, age, and rest.